The message from my mother was ice cold. "We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now." For a moment my thumb hovered above the screen. I read it 3 times, letting the words sink in. My jaw clenched, but I didn't reply. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply smiled, because they didn't realize that home wasn't theirs to take. What happened next destroyed their entire world, and I don't regret a single second of it. If you've ever been used by your own family and then thrown away like garbage, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video if you believe in turning the tables on people who underestimate you, because this story will show you exactly what happens when family greed meets legal revenge. Trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. My name is Jessica Chen, and I'm 28 years old. I grew up in a 2-story colonial house in Portland, Oregon, with my parents, David and Linda, and my younger sister, Amanda. For most of my life, I thought we were a normal, loving family. I couldn't have been more wrong. The exploitation started when I was 14 years old. While Amanda got to focus on her studies, participate in after-school activities, and hang out with friends, I became my father's unpaid construction worker. Every weekend, every school break, every free moment I had was consumed by manual labor. "Jessica, grab the ladder," Dad would bark from the garage. "We're fixing the gutters today." Or, "Jessica, the fence needs painting." Or, "Jessica, the roof has loose shingles." My hands were constantly cut up from handling tools and rough materials. My back ached from hauling heavy equipment around our 3-acre property. While other teenagers were going to movies or school dances, I was mowing endless stretches of lawn, digging fence post holes, and scraping old paint off siding. When I complained, my father would laugh and ruffle my hair. "You're tougher than any son I could have asked for, kiddo. This is building character." My mother would smile and nod approvingly. "Family helps family, Jessica. Besides, you're so much better at this stuff than Amanda. She's more delicate." Delicate. That was their code word for favored. I believed their explanations, because when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, you trust that your parents have your best interests at heart. I thought the constant labor was teaching me responsibility and work ethic. I thought their praise meant I was special, valuable, loved. What I didn't understand was that I was being conditioned, trained to see my worth only in terms of what I could provide for them. As I got older and started earning money from part-time jobs, the financial requests began. "Jessica, honey, could you help us with the electric bill this month? Things are a little tight." Or, "The mortgage payment is due, and your dad's commission was lower than expected. You don't mind chipping in, do you?" Mind? Of course I minded. But by then the pattern was so deeply established that saying no felt like betrayal. So I paid their electric bills, their gas bills, their water bills. I covered their mortgage payments when Dad claimed his real estate business was slow. I convinced myself I was being a good daughter, supporting my family through temporary rough patches. What I was actually doing was subsidizing their lifestyle, while they saved their own money for Amanda's future. Amanda got a car for her 16th birthday, brand new, fully paid for by our parents. I bought my own used Honda with money I'd saved from my job at a local coffee shop. Amanda got her college tuition paid in full, 4 years at a private liberal arts school that cost more than I made in 2 years. I took out student loans for community college and worked full-time while studying business administration at night. Amanda got family vacations, shopping trips, and constant praise for her academic achievements. I got more chores and requests for money. But I told myself it was fine. I told myself that being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they could always count on, made me valuable. It made me love them. The shift in their behavior started about a year ago. Conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered a room, glances between my parents that I couldn't interpret, my name mysteriously left out of family discussions about future plans. Then one evening last March, I was coming home from my job at an accounting firm when I heard voices in the kitchen. I'd been working 12-hour days during tax season, and I was exhausted, but something about the tone of their conversation made me pause outside the doorway. "The deed is in our names only," my mother was saying, her voice low but clear. "Jessica doesn't realize that all her contributions were just gifts, voluntary support." My father chuckled, the sound cold and calculating. "She's been so focused on being helpful she never asked for legal documentation. Classic Jessica. All heart, no business sense." "What about when we sell?" Amanda's voice joined the conversation, and my heart nearly stopped. "Won't she expect something?" "Expect what?" Mom replied. She never asked to be put on the deed, never requested ownership documents. Legally, she has no claim to anything. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, my pulse hammering in my ears. They were talking about selling our house, the house I'd spent 14 years maintaining, improving, and financially supporting, without including me in the proceeds. But more than that, they were talking about me like I was a fool, like I was some naive child who'd been playing for years without realizing it. That's when I knew. They weren't planning to share their windfall with me. They were planning to cut me out entirely and leave me with nothing but years of exploitation disguised as family love. So I didn't confront them. I didn't storm into the kitchen demanding explanations or crying about their betrayal. Instead, I went to my room, opened my laptop, and started researching property law. I spent the next 6 months quietly gathering evidence, every bank transfer I'd made to help with their mortgage, every receipt from home improvement supplies I'd purchased, every contractor payment I'd covered for renovations, every utility bill I'd paid during their supposed rough patches. My father's sloppy record-keeping became my greatest weapon. He'd never bothered to properly document our financial arrangements because he assumed I'd never challenge them. He treated our family finances like a casual understanding between trusting relatives, never imagining I'd need legal proof of my contributions. But I did need proof, and I found it. Bank statements showing $47,000, 0 cents, in direct payments toward their mortgage over the past 8 years. Receipts for $23,000, 0 cents in home improvement materials and contractor services I'd funded. Documentation of $15,000, 0 cents in utility and maintenance payments during periods when they claimed financial hardship. In total, I had proof of $85,000, 0 cents, in direct financial contributions to the property, plus years of unpaid labor that any contractor would have charged thousands for. I quietly consulted with 3 different attorneys, explaining my situation and asking about my legal options. The consensus was clear. I had a strong case for equitable ownership based on my financial contributions and labor investments, especially if I could prove they'd accepted my money under false pretenses. Then I waited for them to make their move. The confrontation came on a Tuesday night in September. I'd just finished another brutal day at work during our busy season when my phone lit up with that message from my mother. "We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. Ha ha." I stared at those words, particularly that cruel little ha ha at the end, and felt something crystallize inside me. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. This was about years of manipulation, exploitation, and now outright cruelty. They thought they were locking me out. What they'd actually done was provide me with the final piece of evidence I needed to prove their malicious intent. I called my attorney at 7 a.m. the next morning. "File the petition," I said, my voice steadied despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. He didn't need clarification. We'd been preparing for this moment for months. 2 days later, my parents' attorney called my phone in what I can only describe as a panic. "Miss Chen, we have a serious problem here. We need to discuss this immediately." Of course they had a problem. Their iron cage of control had cracks, and I'd just widened them into a complete fracture. But I didn't call back right away. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to realize that the daughter they'd been using and dismissing for years had grown into a woman who understood exactly how power worked. The confrontation came the following week in a sterile mediation conference room downtown. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving clarity. A long table dominated the space, with my legal team on one side and theirs on the other. They walked in first, my father red-faced and blustering, my mother trying to maintain her usual air of superiority, and Amanda looking confused and slightly terrified. For the first time in months, I was in the same room with all 3 of them, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no residual love. Just cold, professional focus. I didn't make eye contact with any of them. Instead, I placed a thick manila folder on the table and slid it toward the center. "What's this?" my father demanded, his voice carrying that familiar tone of dismissive authority. My attorney opened the folder with deliberate precision. "Documentation of my client's financial contributions to the property in question, as well as evidence of labor and materials provided over a 14-year period. Inside were copies of every bank statement, every receipt, every financial record I'd meticulously gathered, bank transfers totaling $47,000, 0 cents, toward mortgage payments. Receipts for $23,000, 0 cents, in home improvements and repairs. Utility payments during their supposed financial emergencies. Contractor invoices for work I'd funded when they claimed they couldn't afford necessary repairs. But the most damning evidence was a series of text messages and emails where they'd explicitly requested my financial help, promising it was temporary and that they'd make it up to me once their situation improved. My father flipped through the pages, his confident smirk collapsing with each turn. My mother tried to interrupt several times, but her voice kept catching in her throat as the scope of the documentation became clear. Amanda just sat there, her eyes darting between the papers and our parents' faces, finally realizing she wasn't the beloved daughter in a happy family. She was a beneficiary in a calculated scheme to exploit her sister. "This is ridiculous," my father finally sputtered. "Those were gifts. Family helping family. Jessica never asked for any kind of formal arrangement." My attorney's response was calm and precise. "Mr. Chen, these documents show a pattern of solicited contributions made under the representation that they were temporary assistance during financial hardship. My client has evidence that you and your wife deliberately concealed your true financial situation while accepting these payments." He pulled out another set of documents, bank statements I'd subpoenaed, showing my parents' actual financial position during the periods when they'd claimed to need my help. They'd had substantial savings accounts and investment portfolios the entire time. "Furthermore," my attorney continued, "the text message your wife sent to my client explicitly threatening to make her homeless demonstrates malicious intent to deprive her of the benefits of her contributions." The silence in that room was suffocating. I watched my parents' faces as the reality of their situation sank in. That house, their fortress, their kingdom, their weapon against me, was slipping from their control. My mother tried to speak first, her voice shaky and desperate. "Jessica, honey, this is all a misunderstanding. You never meant for me to document everything," I interrupted, speaking directly to her for the first time since entering the room. "You never meant for me to understand property law. You never meant for me to realize I'd been subsidizing your lifestyle for years while you saved your own money for Amanda's future." My father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "After everything we did for you, after raising you, housing you, feeding you, after using me as unpaid labor for 14 years, I cut him off. "After taking $85,000, 0 cents of my money under false pretenses, after planning to sell the house I helped build and maintain it without giving me a cent of the proceeds." My attorney laid out our demands with surgical precision. "My client isn't seeking repayment of her contributions. She's seeking her rightful ownership stake in the property, based on those contributions. Given the documented evidence of financial investment and labor, we're requesting a 50% ownership interest." The room exploded. My father started shouting about ungrateful children and legal extortion. My mother burst into tears, wailing about family loyalty and how I was destroying everything. Amanda just sat there, in shocked silence, probably calculating how much her inheritance had just shrunk. But I remained calm, focused. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, and their emotional manipulations couldn't touch me anymore. When the judge signed the court order 6 weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse holding the official documents that gave me legal ownership of 50% of the property. Not because my family had generously decided to include me, but because the law had recognized what they'd tried to deny. I'd earned my stake in that house through years of financial contributions and labor. The first thing I did wasn't move back into the house. That place was poisoned by too many memories, too many years of manipulation and exploitation. Besides, they'd changed the locks, remember? They'd made it clear I wasn't welcome there. Instead, I forced the sale of the property. As a 50% owner, I had the legal right to demand liquidation if I couldn't reach an agreement with the other owners about the property's use. And since my parents had made it abundantly clear they didn't want to live with me, and I had no desire to live with them, sale was the only logical option. The house sold for $680,000, 0 cents, significantly more than they'd probably expected thanks to all the improvements I'd funded over the years. My share came to $340,000, 0 cents, minus legal fees and taxes. But here's the beautiful part. My parents had been counting on that house sale to fund their retirement. They'd planned to pocket the entire $680,000, 0 cents, use some of it to buy a smaller place, and invest the rest for their golden years. Instead, they walked away with $340,000, 0 cents before their own legal fees and taxes. barely enough to buy a modest condo in a less desirable neighborhood. Their dreams of a comfortable, wealthy retirement evaporated overnight. With my share of the proceeds, I bought a beautiful townhouse in a quiet neighborhood across town. It's smaller than the family house, but it's completely mine. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every improvement is my choice and my responsibility. They still try to contact me sometimes. My father sends emails full of guilt trips. "After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us?" My mother leaves voicemails dripping with false remorse. "The family is supposed to forgive Jessica. You're going to regret this when we're gone." Amanda has tried to play mediator, suggesting family therapy and claiming she never knew about their plans to exclude me. But she was sitting at that kitchen table discussing how to cut me out of the proceeds. She knew exactly what was happening. I don't respond to any of them. I've blocked their numbers, filtered their emails, and moved on with my life. Because the truth is, when they changed those locks and sent me that cruel message, they thought they were taking my security and my future. What they actually did was hand me the evidence I needed to claim what was rightfully mine. They wanted to make me homeless. Instead, they lost their own home and their retirement security. And now, when I sit in my living room sipping coffee in the peaceful silence of my own space, I smile. I smile because the locks they changed don't matter. I have my own locks now. I smile because the house they tried to keep is sold and half the money is mine. And I smile because that message, meant to break me, became the final proof of their betrayal. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who think they know you best. They assume you'll always be the person they've conditioned you to be, compliant, giving, easy to manipulate. But people grow, people learn, and sometimes people fight back. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to toxic family members. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to take legal action against a family who tried to use you? What was your breaking point? Your stories help others realize they're not alone in these situations, and I read every single comment.